China preparing its aircraft carriers and stealth fighters, the warning not to be underestimated. China's third aircraft carrier, the Fujian, is currently conducting an intensive cycle of sea trials. The CCTV broadcaster confirmed the rumor by explaining that its embarked fifth-generation J-35 stealth fighters, prepared for catapult launch, are also undergoing tests and flights. The local Maritime Safety Administration limited itself to issuing traffic control warnings in the area near the mouth of the Yangtze River, while the Fujian left the Jiangnan shipyard in Shanghai and sailed towards open waters. It didn't end there, because in the past few hours another Chinese aircraft carrier, the Liaoning, along with two Luoyang 3 class guided missile destroyers and two Jiangkai II class frigates, was seen sailing in the waters about 200 kilometers north of the island of Kuba, Okinawa. The movements of Chinese aircraft carriers. Let's start with Fujian, the third aircraft carrier of the Chinese People's Liberation Army and the first equipped with advanced electromagnetic catapults. Local media write that, once it enters service, the vessel will greatly improve the capabilities of the Chinese Navy in offshore defense and long-distance maritime escort operations. With a displacement of more than 80,000 tons, the aircraft carrier in question is the largest conventionally powered warship in the world. It was launched in June 2022 and began sea trials in May last year. Compared to the ski jump launch decks of previous aircraft carriers, electromagnetic catapults should be able to launch heavier aircraft more frequently, allowing fighters to be fully loaded with fuel and armaments. Other large fixed-wing aircraft, such as the KJ-600 early warning control and warning aircraft, could also operate on board the aircraft carrier. According to the aforementioned CCTV, the catapult is energy efficient and flexible, so much so that it allows the launch of drones of different sizes. Thanks to the electromagnetic catapults, the ship will have a very strong ability to fight for air and sea supremacy, the state broadcaster reported. Fujian and Liaoning in action. It is also worth focusing on the recent movements of Liaoning. Japan's defense ministry announced for the first time that China has sent its aircraft carrier to the East China Sea, about 200 kilometers from the Japanese-administered Senkaku Islands, to practice the use of fighter jets. The Joint Staff Office of the same ministry said in a statement that the Dragon aircraft was sailing alongside 4 destroyers in the waters north of the island of Kuba, in the Senkaku archipelago, also claimed by Beijing, where the islets are known as Diaoyu. The ministry added that Liaoning was carrying out takeoff and landing operations using both fighter jets and helicopters, adding that air self-defense fighters had been sent on a mission in response, although no violations of Japanese airspace were reported. However, the climate is increasingly tense, and Tokyo continues to monitor the situation. High-tech hunt for the Russian shadow fleet, skyrocketing tension in the Baltic Sea. For the first time, Paris has deployed the Dupuy de Lome intelligence vessel to the Baltic Sea, a 101-meter long-range unit equipped with sophisticated electronic collection ELINT and signal intelligence SIGINT systems. The strategic objective of this operation is the monitoring and interception of radio signals attributable to the activities of the so-called shadow fleet of Russian oil tankers engaged, according to widespread narratives, in bypassing the restrictions imposed by the European Union through the oil price cap. This mission aims to acquire intelligence data of tactical and operational relevance to support maritime control and the application of multilateral sanctions. What we know on Baltic Sea. The Baltic area has seen a significant rise in geopolitical tensions following the intervention of the Estonian Navy aimed at blocking an oil tanker of the Shadow Fleet bound for the strategic Russian port of Primorsk. Such an action would have triggered a reaction from Moscow, which mobilized a Su-35 fighter to escort the ship, configuring the first direct confrontation between Russian naval forces and those of a NATO member. At the same time, on the energy front, An oil tanker subject to a sanctioning regime seems to have carried out suspicious maneuvers near a 600 megawatts capacity submarine. Electricity cable, essential for energy transit between Poland and Sweden, highlighting potential risks for critical infrastructure and regional energy security. Legal dilemmas. The European Union extended its sanctions regime on May 20th, increasing the number of oil tankers under restriction to 350. However, international maritime law recognizes the principle of the right of innocent passage for merchant ships in the territorial waters of others, without the need for prior authorization. Therefore, any attempt by member states to carry out inspections or blockades could be interpreted as a naval blockade, an act comparable to a declaration of war. This scenario seems to recall the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, when the United States opted for a naval quarantine instead of a blockade to avoid direct military escalation. The Russian position and the policy of deterrence. In response to the Estonian operations, it is learned, the Russian Federation has declared that it is determined to defend its maritime interests in the Baltic with the use of any means necessary. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov described the incident as a piracy attack and announced Moscow's willingness to use all legal and military options to safeguard its naval units. This position has also resulted in retaliatory actions, such as the temporary detention of a Greek oil tanker departing from an Estonian port, an action that has contributed to increasing tension in the region and fueling a spiral of indirect confrontations. Thank you, and please don't forget to subscribe.